with individual action, but then the communities, village communities started working together on that. And then the cement factories kicked in, and the diamond merchants from Brussels, who originated from Saurashtra, they started throwing money into this recharge movement. There were a couple of them who relocated themselves to Rajkot and created Saurashtra Jaldhara Trust, whose sole mission was to buy earth movers and give them away to any community which wanted to create recharge. So basically, outside the government effort, there was a movement in a participatory format, which 20 years later has actually transformed the agricultural and the water economy of Saurashtra and Kutch, a region that nobody ever expected had much agricultural future, has actually been driving Gujarat's agricultural rally. Gujarat was never known for being an agrarian state, but in the last 10, 12 years, Gujarat has been growing its agriculture at 10, 11%. And one would have normally thought that all the growth would be coming in south and central Gujarat, which is all the canals. But all the agricultural growth in Gujarat is coming from Saurashtra, Kutch and North Gujarat, which are dependent on groundwater, which has now been recharged by. So I think managed aquifer recharge has huge scope for India, but not in the Australian or the American sense. We need to find our own kind of analytical equipment to deal with what's happening, tease out all that is good in it, and throw out all that is bad. So I think that we need to adapt solutions and ideas to our specific context, and it is in that respect that I've kind of liked the assessment in Meher's report of things like 24/7 power water supply in urban areas, and also the feasibility of metering. I think many of these solutions are probably $2,000 per capita PPP ahead, or too early. Many of these would probably work if Indian cities were to become significantly richer than they are now. So if we were to work with solutions that are appropriate to the stage of our economic growth, we would have a better chance of success. The third thought that I wanted to put was that when we talk about wastewater, the focus, the overtone tends to be supply side. But I think that there is some merit in looking at our cities as irrigation systems of a very high quality. Our cities today release 15 billion cubic meters of wastewater every year. Now 15 billion cubic meters is 2 Sardar Sarovar dams. And Sardar Sarovar Dam is designed to irrigate 1.6 million hectares. So our cities produce enough water to irrigate 3.5 million hectares of land. And this water is released in a manner that no conventional irrigation system does. The daily volume of water that released is exactly the same, or more or less the same. Most irrigation systems, Bhakra, Mahekadana, SSP, they release water 6, 7, 8 times in a year. Farmers have to adjust their cropping to this. If a farmer wants to grow grapes, he just cannot depend on a canal irrigation system. But if he were on the peri-urban area of a city, and if he had access to wastewater, then he could grow high value crops. So there is actually demand for water that we consider waste. There is an economic demand. In Gujarat, there are towns like Rajkot, for example. It had 3 farmer cooperatives which are 50 years old, which have formal written contracts with the municipality to buy wastewater to irrigate vegetable crops. There are towns like Hunza, which is the biggest agricultural APMC of Asia. That again has, there are private entrepreneurs who have entered into contracts with the municipalities to buy wastewater and sell it to other farmers for irrigation. Now all these patchy examples indicate that there is huge economic potential, and I think what the minister was saying in the morning is not without substance, that there is opportunity to create several tens of thousands of entrepreneurs and small businesses in the use of urban wastewater for agriculture and as well as for industrial supply with very minimal investment in treatment. So I think that the idea of treatment that's most appropriate for us is not really the kind that you find in Amsterdam or Singapore, where you try and bring 70, 80, 90% of the sewage water to drinking water standard. I think there are better uses for resources, at least until such time as we reach a level of economic growth where the best use for wastewater is to bring it to drinking water quality standard and release it then to river, which is what many rich European countries do. But there is an intermediate stage in our country during which there are wealth creating opportunities by designing the urban wastewater economy in a manner that actually can add a great deal of prosperity to peri-urban agriculture. Much store is also being put on roof water harvesting. I think that if you look at the roof area that is available and the domestic water needs, then roof water harvesting needs to be viewed primarily as a drinking water or cooking water supply solution. I think it's wrong to look at roof water harvesting as providing any significant scale an answer to a domestic water supply problem. In most Indian cities, the TDS content in the groundwater that we pump exceeds 600, 700, 800 mg per liter. Now that's not safe. If you cook with that water, if you drink that water, then it is serious public health hazards, public health implications. Now if you can use proper roof water systems to provide drinking water and cooking water to households, that becomes a much more realistic response to a very important problem. Rather than taking roof water harvesting systems as an overall solution to your domestic, because we just do not have enough roof space to impound all the water that we need for bathing and for washing and so on and so forth. So again, a question of adapting solutions to a specific problem. When we look at basin level issues, and I think that's very important. Professor Gosai talked about that, and Mihir also in his talk mentioned that. I think we need to look at what has been happening over time. In 1950s and 60s, a large number of dams were built primarily as irrigation dams, and a water distribution structure was created so that water in the dams was then released to farmers, and entire irrigation economies were founded on those early investments. Now, as cities in the neighborhood grew, then all over India, cities have tended to take over and sequester dams, either fully or partially, to meet their own needs. And this has been done very quietly. Farmers were never told that the water that was meant for you will now not be available to you. They just whittled down the irrigation supplies and water was taken over. So farmers were forced to go back to groundwater. So wells came up and farmers started irrigating with wells and tube wells. Water tables went down, and in many areas, especially in Western India, farmers started doing rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge. Now when they started doing rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge, that began to impede the surface flow into the reservoir. And therefore some state governments actually came down heavily on those local water harvesting structures. Rajasthan at one stage raised down 3,000 of them. So I think there is a conflictual dynamic here between cities, towns, and villages, which need to be understood and needs to be managed carefully. The last point that I want to make is that as we go over the next 15-20 years, one thing that we should expect to see in our cities is for the recycling ratio to increase. The volume of water that a city gets provided every year. Today we recycle hardly 5% of that. But if you go to cities like Amsterdam, then 70, 80, 90% of the water that they supply gets recycled. So the same glass of water actually gets used 5, 6, 7 times. And therefore the net addition of water that you need every year every day goes down. As the recycling ratio increases, which depends on the investments in recycling and treatment and so on and so forth, the normal notions of efficiency become irrelevant. Because if you try and invest in improving water use efficiency in the normal orthodox sense, it doesn't make any sense, because you're actually recycling that water over and over again. So in canal irrigation systems, we try and increase. All our effort is on lining canals so that we increase efficiency. But at that time, we forget that a lot of the water that seeps through the ground actually recharges the well, and all our command areas, canal commands, bulk of the irrigation takes place through wells. The canal irrigation, the surface flow, if you go to Bhakra command, in 1950s, 90% of it was irrigated by canal command. Today, 90% of it is irrigated by tube well commands. And all the water that the tube wells pump out is nothing but water, canal water that is recycled. Canal water seepage that is recycled. So I think the focus should be on recycling, and as the recycling ratio increases, I think our entire approach to the technical management of systems should change. I'll stop at that. Thank you very much. I think it was a pleasure. I learned a great deal from Meher's report, and I compliment.
Thank you, Dr. Tushar Shah. I think since we are running late, we'll go to the next presentation, and the discussions we'll take together after both the presentations are made. May I request Ms. Syali Joshi, who is the CEO of Shrishti Eco Research Institute at Pune, make her presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Is it audible? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm most thankful to Dr. Mihir and Isharji for giving me this opportunity to present my say about the wastewater technological scenario in India. Our Honorable Minister also told in the morning session that we must look to the wastewater as a resource now, so that we can tackle the need of fresh water, whatever is needed for the industry or residential or commercial purposes. So wastewater should be looked as a economical entity, and we should get something out of wastewater, though it's a waste from our industries or residential area. In my presentation, you can see that all over India, the scenario of river is more or less the same. So many rivers are polluted, and as per the CSC's report, 90% of Gangaji pollution is also due to sewage, and 5 to 6% is by industrial pollution. So the need is that we should more focused on residential or domestic wastewater treatment rather than on industrial things, because these are the major contributors for the river pollution. This is what the actual map of rivers in our country. There are so many non-Ganga rivers and Ganga rivers. We are focusing on Ganga basin. For Ganga, we are having so many plans for the restoration. But for non-Ganga rivers also, we need the restoration, because the pollution level of these non-Ganga rivers are also same. What is happening actually, Indian water scenario, current status is that there are two types of economy we are running. Though upstream, downstream is a relative term, but at upstream, if we consider Pune as a metro city, from where I am, we are having so many freshwater resources. It's a ball-like structure. We are getting so much of fresh water from the mountains. We are running blue economy in Pune, and whatever going downstream is a grey water only, or a wastewater. So downstream there is a grey water economy. What we are having dam upstream also, and we are having dam downstream also. So upstream dam is used for drinking water purpose and irrigation purpose, and the downstream dam is not used for anything, because the treatment system the villagers can't afford for the drinking water. We are giving them grey water or wastewater for drinking, and instead of running the drinking